Hi, welcome to today's session. We are just about to start. I've started the session itself, and the recording has begun. So just to let you know, and we're going to give folks just about 30 more seconds to join us, and then we'll begin. Well, it's 11 o'clock here on the West Coast, and I'd like to welcome you to today's session. I'm Bob Lee, and I'm with the product marketing team here at Hustle. I'll be your moderator today, and I am especially excited to be here because this is my third week here at Hustle, and my very first webinar with the team. Now, today we're going to explore how you can use text messaging to increase the ROI of your events. Sorry, getting my getting my pointer moving here. And I'd like to start actually by introducing our speakers. With us today is Amanda Farish, Director of Corporate Events with Ticket Network and Ticket Summit. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Bob. Thanks for having me.
We're thrilled to have you. And sitting right alongside me today is Hustle's very own head of events marketing, Tamila Mirzoyeva. Good morning, Tamila.
Good morning.
Okay, so we got them up. Now let's take just a moment to discuss a couple of housekeeping details. Today's session is being recorded, and we're going to send each of you the link to the recording as soon as possible after we close. If you have questions, we are absolutely going to tackle them, but we're going to do it at the end of the session. So what we'd like to ask you to do is input your questions into the Q&A panel of the webinar client that's on the right side of your screen, and we will address those questions at the end of the session. If for any reason we run out of time and can't answer all your questions, we're going to find a way to answer them afterwards. So you will get communication from us with answers to any of those questions. And finally, if you're having technical difficulties, would appreciate it if you just note those in the chat window. Again, that's on the right side of your screen in the control panel is marked chat. If you'll just give us a note there, then our producer is going to monitor those and we will respond just as quickly as possible. Now, how about I look at the agenda? So it is our belief that event marketing is actually getting harder, and we're going to explore that. We're going to talk about the channels you use today versus the channels you're going to use tomorrow, and especially text messaging, because we believe that text messaging is a terrific tool for event marketers. And then we're going to turn it over to Amanda to talk about how Ticket Summit used one-to-one text messaging to enhance the experience at her Ticket Summit 2018 event. Then over to Tamila, and Tamila's going to discuss how we used it for our own Hustle Client Summit, our very first one, by the way. Then we'll summarize and jump into Q&A. Hopefully that sounds like a good plan. But because I'm a marketer, you have to ask a poll. You have to start with a poll, right? So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to launch this poll. It'll show up on your screen in just a moment. And the question I'd like to ask is, what channels or which channels do you use to drive attendance for your events? Select all the ones that you see. Just pick, you can select them all or any of the ones that are in effect. And what we're going to do is kind of get a sense there of how you use your channels. Now I'm going to leave that poll up for just a second and let folks reply. And so far we got about 70% of you, over 75%. Oh, you guys are really moving. There's 75% have voted. So I'm going to give it just a couple more seconds. And you are terribly responsive. We're at 83%. I never get 83% responding to a poll. That's wonderful. Okay, but now I've jinxed it. I've stalled out. So let's go ahead and close the poll. All right, and by the way, just to let you know, 97% of you answered that email was your top choice. 93% of you use social media. 41% of you use direct mail, and 69% of you use web banners and ads. And finally, 28% of you use calling campaigns. So we've got a pretty good mix of tools that we use. And I want to go back to my screen, and I want to jump to the meat of this. So just as we discussed, most of us today have a pretty well-stocked campaign toolkit. So we are using email and calling campaigns, web and social and search to reach prospects and customers. And we're doing it virtually every day. But what we're finding is that despite all of the skills and the tools and the channels, we're having a really hard time connecting with our audiences. And more importantly, we're having a hard time moving them to act. And we found that one reason for this is just the enormous amount of noise that all of us are generating. Take a moment to think about how you process all the marketing messages that you receive. Now, if you're like me, you probably don't even answer your phone unless it's from someone that you recognize. My inboxes are totally awash in emails, and I usually delete most of them after a quick glance at the subject line or the sender address. And my social media feeds, exactly the same way. And I don't even want to talk about snail mail. But there's one thing that I do and do consistently. I look at my text messages, usually within minutes of their arrival, and I respond almost as quickly. And chances are, so do your customers. Now, if you're an experienced marketer, results like these can be a little stunning. 98% average open rates for texts, and most of us are lucky when we get more than 15 or 20% opens for an email campaign. 45% of text recipients actually respond, compared with an email response rate of 3 to 6%. And all of this happens a lot faster than it does with an email campaign, with most texts read and responded to within minutes of reception. Now, these numbers are real, and the results that we've seen working with dozens of conference organizers and sales and marketing teams are even more exciting. Always let it sort of set in there. So with one-to-one texting, radically higher contact and engagement rates are the norm. And if you look at the results from the University of Kansas and Fearless Mobile Strategies there on the bottom, you'll see that they use texting not just to drive a campaign, but also to supplement more traditional campaigns and channels to improve their results. Okay, that's enough from me. Now let's turn things over to Amanda Farish, Director of Corporate Events for Ticket Network and Ticket Summit, and learn how she and her team used Hustle to increase or enhance the success of their Ticket Summit 2018 event. Amanda, it is all yours.
Thanks, Bob, and thanks for having me today. Before we get started, I did want to say a word about what Ticket Summit is. Ticket Summit is the leading conference and trade show for ticketing and live entertainment executives. And our most recent conference was held July 16th through the 18th at Caesars Las Vegas, and it was our most successful yet, bringing together more than 800 attendees from across the ticketing supply chain. And for this conference, we partnered with Hustle to increase engagement and attendance at our closing gala, which is perennially a difficult event to draw attendance to because they're often competing events from a competing conference. Next slide, please. We used Hustle in two ways. First, before the conference to send reminders to potential attendees to purchase their passes, and second, on the day of the closing gala to remind them about the event that night. Using peer-to-peer texting before the conference was very helpful for a few reasons. First, it pushed people to sign up for the conference, and second, it allowed my on-site team member to practice using Hustle before she'd have to use it in a higher pressure situation on-site at the closing gala. My main finding was that the results were directly related to how much time you're able to dedicate to peer-to-peer texting. Unfortunately, we didn't have any direct conversions, but we did see increased sales on our other social sales channels, particularly our primary ones. We also weren't able to dedicate more than a few hours to it, and I do think we would have seen more conversions and been more successful if we did. Next slide. And using Hustle on-site, our efforts were very successful. We sent the initial text at about 3 p.m. for a 7 p.m. event. I had assigned an on-site team member to monitor the communication and answer questions. We frequently get questions about food, dress, location, etc., and peer-to-peer texting was the best way to field these questions. Far more effective than on-site announcements, especially since announcements are made in the morning and we were sending texts in the afternoon. You can see here that Stephanie was able to answer one attendee's multiple questions at once. Will there be food? Where is it? All of that sort of thing. And so next, using Hustle for our closing gala was very effective. It was our best attended version of the event in several years. Here's some photos of the event. On the event, you can see that it was very exciting. Our engagement rate on Hustle was nearly 50%, which is much higher than I was anticipating. Our audience is largely brokers in the secondary ticket market, and they are very used to doing business on their phones, so it wasn't unusual for them to receive reminders this way. Texting them really drove attendance, made it easier to answer questions, and made the conference more interactive. We also have a lot of returning customers year after year, so it's good to change things up a little bit and offer new forms of engagement each year. Back to you, Bob. Thanks.
Amanda, thank you. That was terrific. And now let's turn it over to Tamila to talk about how she used Hustle for our very own client summit. Tamila, you're up.
Good morning. I just want to say a quick hello and thank you for joining us today. I know we have folks from the Pacific Coast and East Coast, and you probably got a hustle from me yesterday. Yours truly used our technology to showcase how it can be worked for webinars as well. So today I'm going to be talking about how to make your attendees feel like VIPs for our initial client summit. One thing I want to focus on is talking about slowing down to speed up. One of the key things that Hustle really does well is to build real relationships that will benefit event organizers beyond the event. A lot of times we as event marketers and organizers run small teams. We're usually understaffed. There's a lot of details, logistics, organization that has to happen, and we often leave the attendee experience as the last thing that we think about. And in reality, that is the main reason why we do all the work that we do. And so with Hustle and using texting, especially one-to-one texting coming from a human, it makes the attendees feel like they're special. There's a reason why they should come back and why they associate our events with something that, with like success, not just for them as individuals, but also for their businesses. Next slide. So let's talk about our client summit. Someone actually asked me if this was the real name of our summit. Yes, it was the real name. Let's be real, was the theme. We invited top 100 VIP clients to our office to our location in DC. Couple challenges that we faced running this. It increased in scope by 3 times. We had only a couple months to plan it. Very small team, aka me plus another person who joined not that long ago. And it was our first ever summit that we've ever done. So everything that you can imagine could potentially go wrong, felt like it will. But one thing that I really wanted to focus on is that since every person in that room was incredibly important to us as a company, I wanted to create the most attentive VIP experience for both of them. And in the end, it was a huge success. Our clients loved meeting our team. We got to learn a lot from their experiences and their stories, and I think it's going to go down in the books as one of key history moments in Hustle's history. So next slide. How did we do it? One thing that when we were building the text messaging campaign, and I also saw this as a question that someone texted to me yesterday, is, you know, how do you start the conversation? Like how do you look at texting in a way that makes sense for your current initiatives? And we broke it down to 3 components and 3 essentially buckets: pre-event, during event, and post-event. And the goals between each one for pre-event was to start the conversation. A lot of times, as a lot of you know on the call, we as marketers and event organizers have to take mass amount of information and make sure that the attendees book their hotels, book their flights, they know the agenda, they sign up for our sessions, our sponsors are recognized. And it's just a mass amount of information that we have to give to the attendees. And so we broke it into chunks and used Hustle during those times to send out warm reminders, welcome messages. We sent a picture of the agenda, and even did a day before reminder similar to the one that I did yesterday. Cool. And then during the event, this is kind of the bulk of treating the attendee as a VIP. We segmented a lot of the content and made special invitation to the VIP party, similar to what Amanda talked about. The location was in a different building, which I'm sure everyone on the call has experienced, huge logistical venue challenges. And we were afraid that maybe there'll be a drop-off, since folks a lot of times don't know where it is, they don't know how to get there. And so we used texting to remind folks towards the end of the day, hey, we also have this amazing VIP party where some of our actually employees DJ'd, so pretty cool. And then we also gave out we gave out shout outs to select customers, partners, and sponsors. And this can be a really great white glove service that you can provide for your long-term partners, folks who've been helping you put on the event throughout the experience. And post-event, which I think is really, this is where it gets really interesting, especially for any event marketers out there right now who are in the B2B space, where you're working really closely with your sales team. So how do you keep the conversation going? For our team, our main way that we're measured is by feedback and NPS scores. A lot of times, once the attendee is done with the event, they delete the mobile app and they're on the plane and they're going back to their home. But we don't get to hear their actual feedback about what to improve for next year. And so you can use a quick text to send out a link with top 3 questions and capture that while on their move and in an area that they actually prefer, which is their phone. Another thing that I'm actually working really closely with right now is how to keep the conversation going and pass really high potential leads to our sales team. And in this conversation, we can do a follow-up on in-show conversations, invite them to future events, and it comes off very seamlessly in the process. So next step. All right, so some fun stats, and Bob kind of covered some of it. It actually aligned very closely with the averages that we've seen in other campaigns. 98% engagement rate, which is amazing. 38% positive action rate, which means if we asked them to book a hotel, we saw a spike in hotel registrations. If we asked them a question, folks responded. And we sent out 700 messages. Thank you, our amazing sales engineering team who helped us run this campaign. And we got 135 inbound replies, which is amazing. I also want to add, I love when attendees respond, even if they're not attending, which I've never had an experience with. Like folks are like, I'm sorry, I'm at the dinner. I totally forgot. And I'm like, oh, it's okay, come to my next event. I appreciate it, thanks. Okay, next slide. So here's some examples of our conversation. As I mentioned before, for the pre-event, just reminding people all the logistics. A lot of times this information gets buried in emails, or people don't really think about the event until the day of, which for an event marketer, it's the worst, but it's the world we live in. People don't remember until the day before. And so anyway, to really reinforce some of the existing information, especially if it's really important, like, hey, you have to come to the registration. It's in a different location than the actual programming. And then one thing that I really liked that we did, which was for our client summit, we had some pretty big product launches, and some of our largest clients were in the room who've helped shape that product roadmap. And so we really, really wanted to hear what they thought. Crossed fingers that they liked it. And so we used it throughout the conference to ask about the product roadmap and hear their feedback and see if there's anything else we can improve for next year. Next slide. Cool, that's it for me.
Okay, thanks, Tamila. Well, we're about ready to wrap this up. So let's close it with another poll. And I'm going to launch that in just a second here. Now, the poll that you're seeing now is actually asking you about whether texting is going to become part of your marketing mix. So the options, of course, are you're already using it, you haven't adopted it yet, but you're looking at it, you haven't explored, but you're thinking about it, you're undecided, or no way. So we'll give you just a second to answer those questions, and we're looking at 46. I love these counters that I can see. So we're at 56% voting, stalling out here. Okay, I'm going to give you just enough. Oh, now we're at 60. This is like a race. 70. Okay, going to give you just another 5 seconds or so, and then we will move into the Q&A. All right, that's good. Let's close the poll. And what I'd like to do now is just open it up for questions. If you haven't put in a question into the window, this is a great time to do it. And it looks like we do have some questions. I want to start with, does Hustle work internationally? I think we certainly have international customers. So if you're asking about, say, specifically whether it is localized into different languages, I believe the answer is no. But remember, I'm only 3 weeks in. So why don't I take that aside, and we will actually get that direct answer and get it back to you. Tamila, did you have a thought there?
So we do work in Canada and Australia, but every country has a different laws and regulations around text messaging. And so we're currently predominantly in the US, but we do have partners who help us in some countries. So the answer is yes, some countries, but no, we're not internationally available to everyone.
Perfect, thank you. Another question, how does GDPR play into text messaging? And I think I can actually answer that. If I mess it up, somebody's going to correct me. It actually is a great scenario for us because in this particular instance, you're already getting an opt-in on these text messages typically, and you're having a one-to-one conversation with someone. It's not a blast. It's not like an email blast or a text blast. Think of it simply this way. You're connected to that other individual. You're presenting information, they're responding, and so now you have a direct connection and conversation with one person, and that's the beauty of one-to-one text messaging. You can do it at scale, but these really just evolve down into single conversations between people. And if you'd like more information, there's information about GDPR on our website. You can go there and take a look at it, and we'll be happy to send you more information as we have it come. I see another question. How do you obtain cell numbers? So, well, first of all, this is your list. So the idea being is that you're going to want to get those cell numbers. Now, one thing that we do is if you submit a list with telephone numbers, our platform will essentially scan those numbers, identify those that are not cell numbers, and essentially pair them out. So you'll get 2 separate lists, one that is verified cell numbers and the other might be landlines. And then you can, of course, address the communications with the cell numbers. Again, more information on that on our website as well, so don't take my word for it. Can users opt out of texting if they no longer want to receive updates? Absolutely. And what's the average deliverability rate? Tamila, what are your thoughts on that?
So most of the text messaging comes off. It's similar to a conversation you would have on a text. You would receive a text. So on the sender end, it looks a bit more of like a dashboard where you're managing multiple conversations. But on the user end, it comes in just like it would as a text. So however quickly the telecoms will send the text through their rails is however quickly you will get that SMS. But it also depends on your list, whether it's coming from, like we mentioned, Canada or Puerto Rico, et cetera.
Thanks, Tamila. There was, by the way, there's a note there from Michael saying he didn't manage to get in on time. Will this webinar be sent to attendees? The answer is absolutely. There's a question here from Adam. He says, how do you make a decision on when it makes sense to use email versus switching over to text messaging? Amanda, what are your thoughts on that?
Sorry, I was muted there. I think it depends. It depended mostly on time and how quickly do I need an answer? Is it about answering people's questions very quickly as opposed to email? For sales, for pure sales and driving people to the conference as a whole, we basically saw it as a third chain, as a third channel in which to reach people. So it's trying to reach people across multiple channels and also more time sensitive channels.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. Another note here, can people respond to your messages or is it only a one-way channel? This is a conversation. So what typically happens is you'll send an initial text. You might ask a question in that text or just share a little bit of information. You'll get a response from, and as we talked about, there's like a 45% response rate, and now you can respond. You'll have the conversation going, and you'll be stunned at how much information is exchanged, how many exchanges actually occur during the course of a single campaign. So the answer is absolutely, it's a two-way street. And I want to just scan down some great questions here, by the way. Thank you so much for that. Oh my, okay, there's a question here that I think we're going to take offline, but I want to at least address it. Can you describe the newer update in Hustle that allows other agents to act on another agent's unanswered responses? That's pretty granular, Catherine, so if you don't mind, we'll take that offline and we will get back to you with that information, if that's okay. Now, how do you avoid messages being blocked as spam by carriers? Tamila, do you have any information on that? Tamila's looking at me like, why did you ask me that question?
So the human layer of our software is where we truly differentiate between a mass texting tool and a one-to-one conversation tool. So a lot of times what the CCPA compliance goes around is kind of a spamming where there's the algorithm that is sending out multiple messages, but there's not a human on the other end sending those messages. And with us, because it's one-to-one, a human is sending another human conversation, it's not considered spam by the carriers. And we also have best practices around, don't poison the well, if you will. A lot of times when we work with our clients, we say, this is at the end of the day, you're building a relationship. You're not trying to clog another channel with tons of information. So some of the best practices include one CTA, stating your name, adding an emoji, which actually increases engagement rate. Little did you know. So.
Excellent. Thanks, Tamila. The question from Michelle asking, what's the average opt-out rate for text after a subscriber receives their first message? I don't know that we have those numbers on hand, but we'll find that out for you, Michelle, and get that answer back to you. A message or a question from Grace, are the texts recorded and sent back to any CRM systems? Well, yes, we absolutely record the entire conversation, and we're working on integrations. Matter of fact, we're just about to launch a new Salesforce integration, as well as some others with CRMs that are more dominant in the public sector, political campaigns and things like that. There'll be a lot more of those to come, by the way. So Michael says, I'm reviewing SMS marketing. I have lots of numbers and automate everything at the moment. I've been looking at Twilio. What's the difference between Hustle and Twilio? Well, Twilio is a base platform. We actually work with Twilio, but if you want kind of an end-to-end one-to-one text messaging platform, that's us essentially. Whereas when you're looking at Twilio, you're looking at tools.
And one thing I will add is with Twilio's platform is ultimately built for engineers, and you're going to require tons and tons of engineering hours and talent to build a user-friendly product. And one of the key differentiators for Hustle is that we are a ready-to-use dashboard, so anyone can be up and running in less than 15 minutes, even folks like me who are not always as tech savvy on new tools. One thing I was going to add for as far as SMS marketing, so there's a very clear differentiation between automated SMS marketing and one-to-one text messaging. The one-to-one text messaging is where we involve two humans, and it goes under kind of more of a conversational marketing world. And then mass and blast tools notifications are considered by the telecom as essentially blast communication.
Thanks, Tamila. Well, we want to be respectful of your time. There are a few questions that we are going to have to get back to you on, but it's 11:30 here on the West Coast, and we want to make sure that you have time for the rest of the day to get your work done. So remember, you can always go to hustle.com to find out more information. If you have specific questions about using Hustle, you can reach out to our sales team at sales@hustle.com. You will get a link with the recording from this session. And for those of you that we didn't get to your questions, we are going to take a look at them. We're going to find out the best way to get back to you, and we will do so. So I'd like to close by thanking Amanda and Tamila and to thank all of you for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you in our next session, which is coming up around the bend. Thanks, and have a great day.